Tom Thibodeau is seething right now. He is at peak Tibbsness right now, Scal, frustrated with his team's defense. The Knicks are mired in mediocrity as well. What's going on with the New York Knicks?
Julius Randle is a mediocre superstar.
All right, Scal, something I've always wanted to ask you. How many people come up to you and think they can beat you one-on-one?
Too many. It's amazing how I have to walk around this world and justify that I can beat people one-on-one. It's like, I've done this challenge. Some kid challenged me and went viral. How much more do I have to do? And it's funny, I don't think I can hit like a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, nor do I feel like I can tackle a running back in the NFL. But for whatever reason, somebody always thinks that they can beat an NBA player. I don't get it.
All right, Scal, Neil O'Shea is out in Portland. So now the question becomes, is it time for a big change with the Blazers?
Now, weren't we in Vegas in the summertime, like hot as hell, sitting by the pool saying, why doesn't Portland blow it up? And we say that because they have guys that people want. Just go through their roster. They could probably have come out of this with 10 first-round picks. I don't know why they waited, but they did. Now they got to figure this thing out.
What's got to be revisited at this point is a CJ McCollum, Ben Simmons swap. That, to me, makes way too much sense for both teams. The Blazers are sitting at the bottom of the NBA in virtually every defensive category. And the Sixers, watch them play, they could use some offensive firepower there. Now, this was a deal that was discussed early in the preseason. The Sixers at that point were asking for absurd things. They wanted multiple first-round picks in addition to CJ McCollum. So it was a non-starter then. But I wonder, with both teams kind of being where they are right now, isn't that something that they should both want to get on board with?
Screw that, man. I want Damian Lillard. Why can't I get Damian Lillard? Like, you think, so Portland needs to go down. They need to rebuild. I know it's small market. They're not going to attract any big-time free agents. So Damian Lillard would be up in Portland for some absurd contract, like 50, 55, eventually making $61, $62 million. And if you're in a rebuilding team, no player is worth $50, $60 million. So if I'm Philadelphia, and I think it's starting to make sense, more sense. Damian Lillard is 30, 31. Ben Simmons is 26. Make that swap, and I can build around. I know, like, Ben Simmons struggled against Atlanta in the playoffs in the fourth quarter, but I can build around Ben Simmons during the rebuild. If I had guys that just ran the floor and shot the ball, I could probably overvalue those guys because Ben Simmons, who leads the league, at least last year, in assists to three-point field goals made. So at this point, we got to forget CJ McCollum. We need to start having the conversation of Damian Lillard for Ben Simmons. And I know Philly will have to give up a little bit more than that, but that's the real conversation. I don't want CJ McCollum if I'm Philadelphia. I mean, he's like a better version of Seth Curry. I want Damian Lillard if I'm Philly.
Let me ask you this, though, Scal. If you're Portland, like, how nervous are you getting about the trade value of Damian Lillard? Right now, he's having the worst shooting season in the last 8 years. Now, I get it. Like, a shooter's not going to forget how to shoot. He'll probably rally. But this is a guy that's had to carry a heavy workload during his time with the Blazers. He's dealt with multiple different kind of minor injuries, including the abdominal one he's dealing with right now. If I'm the Blazers, maybe because of that, there's a sense of urgency to get the best deal possible for Damian Lillard.
100. I mean, you can think no matter what, Damian Lillard, in my opinion, has to be traded. I don't see any circumstance where he's in Portland and they're losing or playing in the play-in or even losing in the first round of the playoffs. I don't see that as a situation in which I'm so happy I'm paying Damian Lillard $55 million. So there's a point in which it's time to move on. Now, if Damian Lillard was 6'10", I think the conversation would be a little bit different. But at 6'3" and, you know, a guard, to me, I have to move on from Damian Lillard. I can't pay him that. I have to start the rebuild process, and I try to get as many first-round picks. Don't forget, you can probably get a first-rounder for Nurkic. Norman Powell, people valued. Robert Covington, people value. CJ McCollum, people value. So now is the time to sort of do this Oklahoma City thing and like just break it up and figure it out. And the number one guy I would go with is Ben Simmons. Like, I don't want Kyrie Irving or John Wall or Russell Westbrook. I want Ben Simmons at 26 and a guy who can pass and get downhill. So I know he doesn't. I know there's a mental health and all this stuff surrounding Ben Simmons. To me, I would take him over all the guys who are in flux right now.
Hey, somebody suggested on social media, on Bleacher Report, I think it was, a Simmons for McCollum swap, and Ben Simmons liked it. Ben Simmons might like the idea of playing for the Portland Trail Blazers, so you never know. All right, we've got to move on. Let's talk about the Knicks, where your good friend, Tom Thibodeau, is seething right now. He is at peak Tibbsness right now, Scal, frustrated with his team's defense, frustrated with some of the young players on his roster. The Knicks are mired in mediocrity as well. What's going on with the New York Knicks?
Julius Randle is a mediocre superstar. That's the deal. And they can't close out games. A lot of these losses are coming down to the final stretch where they can't get anything good to the basket. I would tell Tibbs to his face. I would pull him to the side and I would tell him if I was on his staff. I would tell him if I saw him at the bar. I might even text message him. Just do it collectively. Don't give the ball to Julius Randle down the stretch. But you're right. They took Kemba Walker out of the rotation. But the teams they're playing are a lot better. Like the Chicago Bulls and Brooklyn Nets. Those teams are better. So it's kind of a small sample size. I think they're playing better. But it doesn't ignore the fact that if they're in a close game, I never expect the Knicks to win. So that's what's going on with them. Maybe all of a sudden, this Portland Trailblazer, maybe they get involved in Damian Lillard. Maybe they get involved in Russell Westbrook, John Wall. But what they have right now is not good enough. And do you think that the fans being in the building is affecting the Knicks? They were great when there were no fans. All of a sudden, fans get in the building during the playoffs. They suck against Atlanta, and they suck this year. So you tell me, are they bothered by the Knicks fans being there?
I don't think they're bothered by the Knicks fans. I think two things are happening right now in New York. Randle and RJ Barrett have not taken steps forward. Both these guys had career years. In Randle's case, it was a long career. In RJ Barrett's case, it's only been a couple of seasons, but both these guys were playing well above their heads last season. Now, I don't know if the league has adjusted to Randle, if he's still struggling to adjust to the new physicality rules in the NBA, but he hasn't been close to the same guy. RJ Barrett, his shooting numbers over the last month are terrible. This was a guy that shot the ball pretty well last season and shot the ball pretty well at the start of this one, but the last month, he has not been very good at all. The other side of it, and this is one that is more inexplicable to me than what we're seeing offensively, is why are they so bad defensively? Why are they 22nd in the NBA in defensive efficiency when they were third last year, Scal? I mean, do they really miss Reggie Bullock and Elfrid Payton that much that they would take this kind of slide on the defensive end of the floor?
So with Kemba Walker, they were 15 points worse on the defensive end of the floor. And like I said, it's only a small
terrible, yeah.
Yeah, it's only a small sample size. So I got to see this group over, 10 games to really fully understand that. But with that being said, I bet you they cannot wait till December 15th when free agents that they've signed are now trade eligible. There's no way the Knicks are moving forward with this particular team. They're going to make some type of move. I just don't know what move they're going to make. Maybe they go star chasing and try to get like a big time player out there. But for right now, when you're watching this team, you're supposed to take another step forward. They're taking a step backwards.
Scal, the Knicks played in the same division as Boston. Didn't they see the Kemba, Evan Fournier backcourt last year? Didn't they kind of know what that would be defensively?
Thibodeau thinks he can fix all on the defensive end. So that's just a different topic. Not everyone, he can't make you and me good defensive players, Chris. That's just not how it works.
No, he can't make me good anything. That's for sure. All right. We mentioned Boston, and the Celtics right now are another team that's been dipping up and above and under the 500 mark. Jason Tatum has been up and down. Jaylen Brown has been in and out of the lineup. Marcus Smart has had his moments, but not quite enough as his shooting numbers have really started to crater this year. Is it time for the Celtics to shake things up?
No, and here's the reason why. I think I'd like the way they played throughout the season, at least the identity of we're going to be minus the first 3 games of the season where they were like 28th in the NBA in defense. Like they've been a top 5 defensive team. So you don't want to break that up. If Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum could play well together and one was a guard and the other like a point guard and a 2 guard, I'd say, yeah, you got to move those guys. But nowadays those guys can play 1, 2, 3, or 4, and because of their versatility on both ends of the floor. I've seen possessions where Tatum can guard bigger guys or guard smaller guys. So I wouldn't break that up yet, but I do think ultimately for them to get to a championship level, those guys got to play better together. You know that Jaylen Brown has only passed the ball to Tatum 58 times this season in about 12 games. That's ridiculous. That's like about 5 times a game. You're passing the ball to your best scorer only 5 times a game. And then of that, there's only been 3 assists from Brown to Tatum. So that's like a problem to me. So during all this, how about running like a 2-man game? How about working together and trying to get buckets off of each other? That's what I would like to see. And if they can get to that point, but I'm not sure I want to just like all of a sudden just cross it off the list, say they can't do it. I think that both those guys are learning how to become better players and using the players around them.
Yeah, I think Jaylen being out of the lineup as often as he has this season is a reason why we're having this discussion right now about potentially breaking them up. I think they're fine together. They are not the problem, those two guys playing together. As far as a shakeup goes, though, Scal, the Celtics are kind of in a weird spot with their backcourt. I mean, Dennis Schroeder is playing great. I mean, I thought he was one of the best signings of the entire offseason last year when you consider the price the Celtics got him at. But he's playing so well, like they're not going to be able to afford him next year. Like he's going to wind up getting a bigger deal with another team down the line. That makes it kind of difficult to shake things up with another trade. Like, can you really trade Marcus Smart right now when you know that you probably only have a few more months left of Dennis Schroeder? When I look at deals this team can make, if they're hovering around this spot, around the trade deadline in February, and there's something real on the table for Dennis Schroeder, I do it. He's been great for them, but if you can't bring him back next year, and even if it only brings back draft value in return, I feel like you got to get something for him now when you know you're going to lose him down the line.
I mean, a lot of people think that, but why not like roll the dice with these guys and maybe they're hitting their stride and they can do something in the playoffs. But listen, they're trending a better direction. Their defense is always good night in and night out now. Now their offense has to catch up. It's a lot easier to catch your offense up than your defense. So I wouldn't do anything yet with this group. I like the group. I think the biggest thing is just like, I want to see a game where like Schroeder, Brown, and Tatum all play well together. And I want to see like a stretch of like 4 of 6 games where they do. And once they do, or they can, or it's like you said, it's like right after the trade deadline, and it's like, we know that can't happen, then at that point you can make that decision. But I still personally, I love ball movement and I love defense. So when I watch this team, at least I enjoy watching them play because they do both of those things. Now it's a matter of time. It's just like finding your rhythm and figuring out how to move the ball, how to guard at a high level, and still, like make some open shots. Like when the Celtics get open shots, they are a pretty dangerous team. So we'll see where they trend from here. But I don't think it's like right now is the time you have to make a harsh decision and decide we're going to go a different direction.
You know what I can't figure out, though, is why do they have these nights where they completely malfunction defensively? I mean, Utah got a $137 on them a couple of nights ago. I mean, and that's not the only time that's happened to the Celtics. We talk about this on NBC. You go up and down that roster, how many minus defenders do you see there? They're mostly plus defenders, and yet sometimes they look completely lost out there. That's the part of the Celtics I don't really get. They have the talent to be top 3 in the NBA in defensive efficiency. Too often they don't play like it.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge and the consistency. But Utah is a ridiculous offensive team, and they played around 36 good minutes of defense. It was just the beginning of the game with the 9 threes in the first quarter and the end of the game with the 5 threes down the stretch that really, really stood out. Outside of that, I had no complaints. So it's a matter of just being able to do it for 48 minutes.
Outside of that, that's like, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? It's part of the game. They malfunction to key parts of the game.
But you have to watch the game. You have to understand down the stretch, those guys were hitting ridiculous. It was 27 threes that night, Chris. Give them a break. Can't they have one night against one of the best offenses that no one's talking about because everyone's talking about the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors? Yeah, Utah's pretty good. So I don't want to overreact to the Celtics on that one night against them. Then they backed it up the next night against Portland and put the smack down. So I'm personally more concerned with making open shots than I am with this team playing defense. They have the personnel to do it.
I'm going to write this down for next week. Talk about the Jazz juggernaut. That's what I'm going to talk about first thing next week.
They're good.